He stepped through the crowded market, his boots clanging against the metal floor, and eyes scanning the stalls, where traders shouted over the hum of engines, and the hiss of steam everywhere. The smell of oil and roasted food mixed together, creating a scent that made him wrinkle his nose, but he ignored it. He spotted a small crate, tucked between a pile of scrap metal, and an old hover cart. The wood scratched and splintered, and inside he could see the faint glimmer of scales that shimmered. In the flickering lights he leaned closer, and the little dragon inside lifted its head, peering at him with eyes like molten gold that seemed too intelligent for its size. The trader grinned, revealing a mouthful of crooked teeth, and waved a hand over the crate, saying, "3 credits for this one, only barely worth the metal holding it, and everyone else would laugh at you for even looking at it." The mechanic hesitated only for a moment, because he had seen enough dragons in books and stories to know that something small could hide power if it chose to. He counted his credits, fingers trembling slightly with excitement, and handed them over, watching the dragon tilt its head almost as if it understood the exchange. The trader snorted and shoved the crate toward him, as if dismissing it like it was nothing. And the mechanic lifted it carefully, feeling the tiny weight shift in his hands, and a strange warmth radiated through the wood. He ignored the murmurs of other buyers and friends, who shook their heads, calling him foolish and wasted. But inside, a spark lit in his chest, something that whispered that this creature was not worthless, and that in time it would prove itself. He navigated the crowded market, weaving through merchants and carts and street performers, while the dragon made soft chirping noises that sounded almost like curiosity, or maybe amusement, and he found himself smiling at the sound, as if it had broken some invisible tension. He imagined the possibilities of what it could do: small fire, maybe sparks of electricity, or even just a companion to share the long nights of repairing machines and tinkering with engines. He felt a pulse of anticipation that made his heart race faster than the city engines outside, and as he walked toward the gate that led to his workshop, the dragon shifted in its crate and let out a tiny roar that was almost playful, almost daring him to doubt its worth, and he gripped the crate tighter, feeling a surge of excitement, because he knew this was the beginning of something that would change everything. And he whispered softly to it, "Do not worry, little one, I will show them who you truly are." And the dragon blinked slowly, golden eyes gleaming in the dim light, as if it understood exactly what he meant, and the city around them faded into the background, leaving only the promise of what was to come. The workshop door creaked as he pushed it open, the smell of grease and hot metal hitting him like a familiar blanket, and he stepped inside, holding the crate carefully over piles of tools and scattered engine parts. Sparks from unfinished machines danced across the floor, and the hum of power cores filled the room with a constant low vibration. He set the crate down gently, and the dragon wriggled inside, letting out a soft hiss like it was testing the air and the space around it. He crouched beside the crate, running a hand over the rough wood, feeling the warmth of the creature inside, and whispered, "Welcome home, little one." The walls were lined with shelves of spare parts, wires, and mechanical limbs, all waiting for his attention, and in the dim light the dragon's scales caught every flicker, turning gold to bronze to green. In the shadows it nudged its nose against the crate, the sound almost timid and yet filled with curiosity. He lifted the lid slowly, and the dragon blinked at him, blinking again as if measuring him. He extended a hand, and it sniffed cautiously, then hissed softly, retreating a step but not running. He smiled, knowing trust could not be rushed. He set down his wrench and crouched lower, showing no sudden movements, and for a long moment they simply stared at each other, the dragon tilting its head, the workshop alive with the quiet buzz of machines and the occasional drip of oil from a leaking pipe. Sparks from the forge painted their faces in shifting light, and for the first time he saw not a useless creature but a being alive and aware, waiting for a choice to be made. He whispered again, "Do not be afraid, I will not hurt you." And the dragon gave a small roar that was almost a growl, almost a question, almost a warning, but it did not try to escape, and he felt a thrill run through him, knowing this was the beginning of a bond stronger than any tool or engine in the room. And the workshop seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The next morning, the workshop buzzed with voices and clanging metal as his fellow mechanics crowded around their workstations, laughing and joking while he carried the crate carefully across the floor. Their eyes widened when they saw the tiny dragon, and instant whispers started flying around, calling it pathetic, useless, and a waste of credits. He ignored the teasing, knowing their words were empty, but the dragon twitched inside its crate, ears flicking back and eyes narrowing as if it could sense their judgment. They shoved tools in his direction, daring him to show its abilities, and he set the crate down gently, letting the dragon peek its head out. Its wings were too small, its claws too fragile, or so everyone thought, but he saw the way its eyes followed every movement in the room. Calculating, observing, he knelt low so the dragon would feel safe and whispered quietly, "Patience, little one." They prodded him with sarcastic questions, asking if it could breathe fire or even lift a single bolt. And one of them laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his wrench, calling the dragon a toy. He felt the heat rise in his chest, a mixture of irritation and determination, and he refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. The dragon shifted closer to him, curling slightly around his knees, and a soft hiss escaped it, like a tiny warning, or maybe a promise. The mechanics leaned in closer, expecting nothing, and he watched the dragon blink, slowly flicking its tail, and letting out a low rumble that seemed almost inaudible yet filled the room with a strange presence. Everyone froze for a moment, unsure if they heard it, and he smiled, knowing they had no idea what was coming, and that the day would reveal more than they could ever imagine about the creature they had mocked. So he decided it was time to see what the dragon could really do, and carefully placed it on the metal workbench. Sparks from nearby welding machines reflected off its scales, making them shimmer in gold and bronze. The other mechanics circled around, sneering, waiting for a show that would never come. He reached out slowly and tapped the dragon gently on the snout, and it blinked, then puffed a tiny wisp of smoke that curled into the air and vanished instantly. The room erupted in laughter, calling it pathetic. He ignored them and tried again, whispering softly to the dragon, encouraging it to breathe a little stronger. Its chest rose and fell, and then with a sudden flare it exhaled a stream of fire so small yet so precise that it lit a candle without singeing a single tool. The laughter died down, replaced by murmurs of surprise, and the dragon hissed softly, curling its tiny wings around itself as if pleased with the result. He smiled, brushing his fingers through its warm scales, and whispered, "Good job, little one." The mechanics stared in disbelief, and one of them muttered that maybe it was not completely useless after all. But the dragon made no more noise, retreating back slightly on the workbench, its eyes following every movement in the room, like a quiet storm waiting for the right moment to roar. Night fell over the workshop, and the city outside hummed with engines and distant lights, casting shadows across the scattered tools and metal parts. He crouched beside the dragon on the workbench, its tiny body trembling slightly as if unsure of him or the world around it. He whispered softly, "Do not worry, little one, you are safe here." And the dragon blinked, golden eyes reflecting the dim glow of the forge. Sparks danced across the walls, and the shadows of machinery stretched like giants around them. He lowered himself to his knees, putting himself at the same level as the creature, holding out a hand that trembled slightly with anticipation. The dragon sniffed cautiously, then hissed softly, curling its wings around itself. He spoke words of apology for the mocking words of others, promising that it need not perform or impress anyone, only him. Only trust and understanding. He stayed silent for long moments, letting the dragon feel the warmth of his presence. And the quiet of the workshop. The creature shifted closer, sniffing his hand and chest, rising and falling with tiny breaths. Finally, it let out a small rumble, almost like a purr, and nuzzled against him, and he felt a surge of relief and connection that made his heart pound. He whispered again, "I will show them your worth." And the dragon blinked slowly, then lifted its head, golden eyes gleaming in the dim light as if it understood everything, and the quiet room felt alive with the unspoken bond between them, as if something powerful had just begun. The next morning the workshop buzzed with noise and chatter as the other mechanics arrived, laughing and joking, oblivious to the quiet bond that had formed overnight. He carried the dragon carefully to the center of the floor, where sunlight streamed through cracked windows, casting long streaks of gold across the metal and tools. The small creature hissed softly, shifting on his shoulder, wings twitching nervously as if sensing the energy of the room. He set it down gently on the ground, and it paused, watching him intently while the mechanics circled around, smirking and muttering about wasted credits and pathetic toys. They shoved tools and wrenches in his direction, daring him to make it perform or show some sign of usefulness. He knelt low, placing himself close to the dragon, whispering words of reassurance and trust, and the dragon tilted its head, eyes narrowing, golden and molten like pools of fire, waiting for the right moment. Then, with a sudden motion, it reared back, tiny wings flaring, and let out a roar so deep and powerful that the walls of the workshop vibrated, and sparks flew from metal tables and tools, clattered to the floor like falling stars. The sound was not just loud, it carried authority and fury, and the air shimmered with heat and energy. The mechanics froze, jaws dropping, eyes wide in shock, some stumbling backward while the dragon puffed smoke from its nostrils and stomped its claws as if marking the territory of its loyalty and strength. He reached out instinctively to steady it, and the dragon lowered its head slightly, pressing against him as if to show it would obey no one but him. The echo of the roar hung in the air long after it ended, shaking loose the last doubts in the room. The others whispered in disbelief, calling it impossible, and he smiled, brushing a hand over its rough scales, feeling the warmth and the raw power that had been hidden beneath what everyone called useless. The dragon gave another small roar, this one softer, almost approving, and he laughed quietly, knowing the world had just witnessed the beginning of something that would change, not just the workshop, but everyone who had mocked it forever. They both stood, their golden eyes meeting human ones in silence, the roar having said what words never could, and the workshop felt smaller, somehow pressed in by the presence of a creature that had claimed respect not by size or strength but by courage and will alone. The workshop was quiet after the roar, and even the hum of machines seemed to pause, as if listening. He crouched low beside the dragon, hand hovering just above its rough, shimmering scales, and it did not flinch. Instead, it stepped closer, nudging against his knees, curling around him, as if seeking warmth and reassurance. He whispered softly, "Good job, little one," and the dragon tilted its head, blinking slowly, golden eyes reflecting the light of the forge sparks. From nearby, welding arcs danced across the walls, and the dragon followed, each flicker with intense focus. He reached out a hand, and it sniffed cautiously, then pressed its small nose against his palm, a soft rumble vibrating through its tiny chest like a purr or a vow of loyalty. The other mechanics watched from a distance, unsure whether to move or speak, the bond between the human and dragon palpable and undeniable. The creature shifted its weight, curling its wings slightly around his legs, nuzzling against him with a trust that felt fragile yet fierce. He laughed, quietly brushing a hand along its spine, feeling each scale and muscle, and whispered, "I promise I will protect you as you have protected me." The dragon hissed softly in response and lifted its head, eyes meeting his, as if to say, "I understand." The room felt warmer, somehow filled with an unspoken energy, a connection that no words could define. Every tool and piece of metal seemed to fade into the background, leaving only them and the quiet, steady rhythm of trust building between them. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against the dragon's, and for the first time, he felt not just companionship but a shared purpose, a silent promise that they would face whatever came together. The dragon twitched its wings once and curled closer, resting its head against his chest, and in that small act, the useless creature had become something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. The next day, the workshop hummed with the usual clatter and sparks flying from half-finished machines, but something felt tense in the air, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. A power conduit sparked dangerously, sending a shower of orange light across the metal floors, and a grinding sound echoed from an overloaded engine. The other mechanics froze, unsure what to do, and he knew the danger could destroy hours of work, or worse. He glanced at the dragon, its golden eyes sharp and focused, its tiny wings flaring slightly, and without hesitation it leaped from the workbench, landing lightly on the metal floor. Its claws tapped with precision as it approached the sparking conduit, and a low hiss escaped it, smoke curling from its nostrils. The dragon exhaled a controlled stream of fire, not wild and destructive, but exact and measured, just enough to melt the jammed metal and redirect the energy away from the unstable engine. Sparks danced along its scaled body, illuminating the workshop in brief flashes of gold and bronze. The other mechanics watched in disbelief, mouths open, as the small creature worked with uncanny precision, clearing wires, fusing circuits, and breathing tiny sparks exactly where needed. The danger passed in moments that felt like hours, and the workshop settled back into a hum of normalcy. Only now, filled with awe and respect, he knelt beside the dragon, brushing a hand across its warm scales, whispering, "Well done, little one," and it gave a low rumble that vibrated against his hand, almost like a laugh. The mechanics approached cautiously, muttering about how impossible it was, and he smiled, knowing that the dragon had proven not just its usefulness, but its courage and intelligence. The small creature that had cost 3 credits had saved the workshop and earned the trust and admiration of everyone in the room, its eyes meeting his in a silent promise that they would face everything together, and that its worth had never been measured in coins. The workshop was quiet. That evening the machines humming softly and shadows stretching across the walls like silent witnesses to what had happened. He sat on a crate watching the dragon perched proudly on a nearby shelf, golden eyes gleaming in the fading light. The other mechanics had gathered around, whispering in awe, their earlier laughter long forgotten. They looked at the creature that had once been called useless, and now seemed almost legendary in its courage and precision. He smiled, brushing a hand over its scales, feeling warmth and strength radiating from the tiny body. The dragon shifted closer, curling around his legs and nuzzled against him, as if to remind him that they had done this together. The city outside roared with engines and distant chatter, but inside the workshop, there was a sense of calm accomplishment. He whispered softly, "You were worth far more than anyone could see," and the dragon blinked slowly, golden eyes meeting his, as if to say, "I know." The traders who had mocked him the day before would speak in hushed tones about the 3-credit dragon that had proven everyone wrong, and he laughed quietly, knowing that no coin could ever measure loyalty, courage, or fire. He leaned back, letting the dragon rest against his chest, feeling the rhythm of its small, steady heartbeat, and for the first time he understood that what mattered was not the size or strength, but the bond they shared. The tiny roar it had given him the night before still echoed in his mind, and he knew that from this day forward nothing would ever be the same, and that the dragon had earned not just respect but a place in his heart forever.